Hi everybody, and welcome to Cooking Uncovered. It's Miriam again, and tonight I have decided to share with you this great old-fashioned shortbread recipe. And I got this recipe from my girlfriend, actually one of my colleagues at work, Rosanna, and she is just a fabulous cook herself. And she gave me this recipe and it is absolutely delightful. As a matter of fact, I've already baked a batch, and they are really a traditional shortbread cookie, and I like the little holes in the top. Reminds me actually of my grandmother's shortbread, but they are light and flaky and fluffy and delicious. And so I'm going to share the recipe with you right now. The first thing we're going to do is you have to grind up the old-fashioned oats. So the recipe calls for half a cup of old-fashioned oats. Now, don't use the quick oats. You've got to use the old-fashioned large oats. So they go into the processor. That's half a cup. And I noticed, because we've done this at school, my students were doing this today, that the recipe really does double well. And it actually, we can do it times 4. It does quite well. Except for you've got to watch the salt. You wouldn't want to times 4 the salt. So I'm going to process my old-fashioned oats until they're a fine powder. But here, in this bowl, we have to sift all the rest of the dry ingredients. So that's 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, half, 1½ cups of all-purpose flour. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch. Same thing, level it off. Cornstarch. And then I've got 2/3 of a cup, 2/3 of a cup of, perfect, 2/3 of a cup of icing sugar. Now I should explain why I'm all dressed up in this fleece, because I'm so cold. I can't seem to get warm. When I come home from work, it's so cold outside right now in Vancouver. I know I shouldn't be complaining, because I was just talking to some friends in Calgary last night and they're snowed in. We don't have snow, but it is freezing, so I keep thinking, oh, I just don't want to take my fleece off. So, hence the fleece for Christmas baking. And the mere fact that it is a cold night really lends itself well to baking. So here we go, 2/3 of a cup of icing sugar or confectioner sugar. That goes right in. Level it off, there you go. Now I'm going to sift all these into this bowl. And I can see that my oats have been ground down into a fine powder, which is what you want. Now, what we use for this recipe is butter. You can use margarine, go right ahead, but it really doesn't give it the best of taste. I think shortbread, especially when you're doing it for Christmas, I think it's a kind of a special time for the holiday seasons, and butter in shortbread is delightful. Now, when you end up with all those little, you see those little balls, you don't, just get rid of them, don't fight with them. It's okay. Just down the sink, not a problem. Alright, so here I want to show you this, because see, now my oats are all ground up into a fine powder, and before they were like this. See that? So there's the difference. So you definitely want to grind them up just like we've done. So now that I've sifted my ingredients and all my oats, my ground up powdery oats, goes right into the bowl. So I'm just going to move my processor, because now you need a mixer. Either a stand mixer or a hand mixer would do. Excuse me. Alright, I've got my hand mixer here, and I'm going to use 1 cup of butter. I've got to get that from the fridge. What I did was I cut the butter up into little chunks, and I put it in my bowl, put it back in the fridge to keep it cold. So, here we go. We have the stand mixers on. Just use your regular blade, paddle it's called. On it goes, and now in goes your, you want to beat up your butter first. So you're going to get the butter soft. Now I was emailing my girlfriends the other night when I finished my gingerbread recipe, and one of my girlfriends, Joanne, from the east coast of the States, said, great, just in time, and how about shortbread? So this is the shortbread that I tried at work with, as I said, Rosanna, and she gave me this recipe, and it's just absolutely amazing. So that's why we're using this recipe. Soften your butter slightly, and then start adding your the sifted dry ingredients. Now, the trick about this recipe is you do not want to overmix it. So just get it combined, and that's all. Do not overmix, because you don't want to ruin it by overmixing. So we're just going to start slow. Because I know what would happen if I added all the ingredients at once and turned on the beater, everything would go flying. All the flour would be all over the room. So we've got to be careful with that. And I'm going to now set my oven, my rack in the middle position, and my oven is going to be at 400 degrees. I know that sounds crazy, but this works. So trust me on this one. So I'm going to just turn my oven on. So my oven's on to 400. Add some more. And I'm going to just remove the butter that's stuck on the blade, because you know it gets stuck on the blade, of course. It's so much fun being able to bake on these cold nights, because it really does warm up the house, and the house just smells divine, of course, when I bake like this. And most likely one of the kids will be over to have a little taste. I remember when my mother used to bake shortbread at Christmas, and I always remember her using this particular type of cutting tool. This is a really old tool, and I don't know, I actually borrowed it from my school, because I'd taken all my cookie cutters to school, and now at home I don't have any cookie cutters, but I do believe this one came from my mom as well, and it's a traditional shortbread. So this is almost combined. Now I just want to show you this, what it looks like at the moment. It's this. See how it's just starting to come together? It's almost ready. I don't want to overdo it, but I do want it to combine. I do want the butter to be mixed all the way through. So you hear that noise on the mixer? That's when you stop. Drop your bowl, because now it's combined. It's starting to, and this is what it looks like inside. See that it's all starting to come together in a dough, because that's what you want. I have a piece of parchment paper that I'm going to put the dough into, and you do want it to rest for a bit before you start to roll it out. So it comes out in a nice ball of dough, actually similar to what the gingerbread came out, but it's got all these speckles of oats in it, which is kind of neat. So there's my I'm just going to clean this up. There's my dough. Now, I'm just going to let this shortbread dough just rest slightly, because over here I've got a batch that I've already done. So let's get to the rolling part. I'm going to just move my... Now, on your surface, whichever surface you pick, you need a little bit of flour, but not a lot of flour, because if you over-flour, it'll slide around the counter and you won't get any traction, because you do want your shortbread dough to, can you see that? To be rolled out, but you don't want it sliding all over. You want it to sort of catch as well. Now, roll your dough out to approximately 1/4 of an inch. Now, do I need to get the measuring tape out? No, no. I mean, really, your cookies, you can have them as thick or as thin as you want, but These cookies that I baked earlier on started out to be 1/4 of an inch, and look at how pretty they are. And you want them just slightly brown on the edges, not totally brown. So you don't need your measuring tape or your husband's to do this. So we're just going to roll this out, and first rule is always flour your cookie cutter. Bang the excess flour off, and when you're cutting, cut right down and sort of cut down, go right to the bottom, and kind of give it a kick so that you actually, the shortbread comes right off in your hand. It's a little bit easier that way. So then, my cookies go onto my parchment-lined baking sheet, like that. Okay. I'll show you what I do. I'll just do these few here because then I'll keep rolling. This will make, this particular batch I think makes about 4 dozen. And of course you can use any cookie cutter your heart desires. I mean, you don't have to use one of these. This just happens to be the cookie cutter that I remember when my mom was making them, and then in England my grandmother used to use this type of a cookie cutter, with the crinkled edges. So now you could keep going, right? But I want to show you this because it's kind of cool. So I'm going to put this here, and look what I remember. I don't know if it's my mom or my grandmother, but she used to take the fork and just lightly prick the surface on a diagonal with a fork, and it just gives it that very interesting look. Gives it a really, really interesting look for the top of your shortbread. Sometimes it sticks, so again, flour your fork if you have to. Whoops. And of course I like to do everything in 5s, 3s, 5s, whatever, not 2, 4, 6. So I'm going to line my cookies up and I'm going to bake them. Now, the trick is 400-degree oven, for sure, 400-degree oven, and they go in for 6 minutes. Yeah, that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But you want an exceedingly hot oven to really zap your cookies because it's got the butter. The only moisture in there is the butter, right? So you want that to sort of kick your cookies up a notch. So without a doubt, friends, this is one of the best shortbread recipes that I've ever tried. And I know there are lots out there, but the one with the oats, do you see that? Isn't that beautiful? And honestly, it's so tasty. Oh. It just melts in your mouth. It just flakes apart beautifully. So, I hope you enjoy this recipe. I probably got flour on my nose, right? It's been fun. So from Cooking Uncovered, thank you for watching the best shortbread recipe. And remember, 400-degree oven. It's been a blast. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye.